Welcome to Hat-Trick City on WXCI 91.7, Danbury's only all-hockey radio show.
I know that some in our audience don't know the finer points of hockey.
You want me to dummy you again?
Mocha Poo-Poo.
Belted by McCreary, and he is hurt. Hat-tricks, baby! Woo-hoo!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hat-Trick City. I'm your host, DJ Patty Cake, as always joined here by DJ Uncle Matt. A few things before we get into this very special episode. We want to talk about Friday's game and last night's game. Friday night, not our best night. Lost 6-1. Definitely one of probably our worst games of the season, I would say. There's so much that went wrong with that game. I really feel a lot of it, though, was the officiating. I feel that Matt can back me up on that. You know, being that you were on the bench, I mean, I was up top recording, but at the same time, just seeing those calls get handed out, just kind of willy-nilly, it seemed, really just kind of put a hold on an actual game being played.
Yeah, you don't expect that from professional hockey, I don't think. In the playoffs, I think it's usually, more of a situation where the refs kind of put away their whistles and allow the players to decide the game. I think that's one of the biggest things in pro sports. In the playoffs, you must let the players decide the game. And I think on Saturday night, the referees, pretty much the same crew, did just a lot better of a job at letting these guys play. It does look like Binghamton fans want tons of calls, and I think it was a great night for Binghamton fans because they seem to want a ton of calls. They want penalties on almost every little thing. I mean, I saw some video. It had to be the stupidest video I've seen in a long time, saying that Ojic had slew-footed the guy who he laid a completely clean hit on, and the guy fell to the ground, and he did sustain a cut that bloodied his face. People write things on the internet all the time. Binghamton notoriously take to Facebook to say that they won't play ever again in Danbury, and that lasted all of about a week. Again, just seems like par for the course for a city that really wants a lot of whistles blown during the games. And I mean, almost every video from their kind of fan media or whatever is about some missed call. So I'm sure they're still busy from cutting Friday night's game. But Saturday night, Danbury came back, and it was a great, one of our most, something that Billy McCreary said to me after the game was it was one of our most disciplined games. And I think that it was. There were hardly any stupid penalties, and I think that by virtue of the refs kind of backing off a little bit, we saw a great game, definitely for Danbury this time. You can't compare the two games at all. Friday night was absolutely ridiculous. It was a lot of stopping and going and resetting, long pauses for these referee huddles that seem to generate way more confusion and skepticism, I guess you'd say. It's not helping the league that these calls have to kind of be debated over for so long. But I thought last night was a much better job. Much better. And it seemed like the fans appreciated that. It was a great night for Danbury. And I think we're putting out this episode. This is a special episode, kind of. We want to let everybody know that it is a Monday night game, but it's one of the most important hockey games in Danbury in about, many years now. Many years. So I think that if you enjoy going to the games, if you plan on going to the game, bring a friend from work. Bring a friend who once in a while likes to go to. Get people down to the arena. We need help. I don't know what the ticket situation is or anything, but Pat and I think that it's our responsibility to let people know this is going to be a big-time hockey game right here in Danbury. If you go out, if you listen to this podcast, call a friend. Just let people know that this is going to be, it's a decisive game. There's nothing like a decisive game, and it's in our house. Everybody who came out last night, I did see a lot of new faces, but the new faces are welcome at times like this. Let's get everybody who cares about Danbury. It's a tough time for Danbury. We here at WXCI, we're dealing with rumors of budget cuts and whatnot going on in the state university system. So we want to get everybody to rally around Danbury on Monday night. So if you're hearing this on Sunday, if you're hearing this on Monday morning, tell a friend.
Yes, please do. Really huge game. Tomorrow night, it's definitely going to be most likely the game of the season if we're really coming to that point. Up until this point, it is the game of the season. But just to reiterate what Matt said, just tell your friends, tell your family to come on down, enjoy a night of awesome playoff hockey, and, just have a blast, essentially. And, with that being said, here is our very amazing interview with Bill McCreary, as well as Billy McCreary and Aila.
Yeah, Aila, definitely gave some good insight to what's going on in the Federal Hockey League and around Danbury Arena, so it was important that we had her here.
Yes.
But it was really also great to have Billy McCreary Jr., who's Billy's dad, on the show. This guy's been around the NHL pretty much his whole life and been around hockey, So it was great to have him on the show to share some stories. For fans who don't know, Billy's family is just a legacy in pro hockey, starting with, Billy's grandpa, which is Bill Jr.'s dad, and then, a bunch of cousins and uncles of Billy's that have played in the NHL and other pro leagues, and it was really just amazing. This was an interview that Pat and I had always said that if there was an opportunity to have Mr. McCreary come in to the studio here at WXCI, it would be great, and he didn't disappoint at all. It was an amazing interview, just hearing stuff about pro hockey and his input. He's the first NHL player we ever had on the show, former NHL player. And it was great to do it in person. So thanks so much to the McCreary family for, accommodating us.
Yes, and stay tuned for an amazing episode. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Hat-Trick City. I'm your host, DJ Patty Cake, as always, joined by DJ Uncle Matt in the studio. Today, we got some very, very special guests. We got the McCreary trio in the building, Mr. McCreary, Billy McCreary, and Aila McCreary. How we doing, folks?
Doing awesome. Thank you. Good to be here.
Awesome to be here. Appreciate you guys having us.
The trifecta. And the ladies are here, too. Caitlin is here, and Mrs. McCreary is here as well. Great to have Billy Jr. and Billy 3 on the show for the very first time. I have to check with our stat guy, but I believe Mr. McCreary is the first former NHL player to come on Hat-Trick City.
He is.
He is, and he's definitely the first one to do anything like it in person. So it's really great to have you here. This all evolved last night. Pat and I and Billy and Mr. McCreary were all sitting in Billy's office, and he just kind of started to tell us these stories that had Pat and I on the edge of our seats, like just great, like old hockey stuff. And we said, we have to get you into the studio and kind of capsulize this, because I'm sure every fan in the building would have liked to have heard, stories about your dad coming home and saying that Gordie Howe sticked him in the head and all this stuff. So thank you for coming on. And it's nice to have you here, knowing that you probably only have a limited amount of time to be with the family right now. So thanks. But I don't even know where to start. I guess where to start is an interesting tidbit that came out last night is that you were born not too far from here in Springfield, Mass.
Yeah, Dad was with the Springfield Indians for years, and he's from a little town in kind of north-central Ontario, but he was playing back in the Eddie Shore days with the Indians, and they enjoyed some really good years, won some cups.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we'd go back to Ontario for the summers, but spent the seasons in Springfield.
That's kind of interesting, especially the first thing that came to my mind when you said that is there was no Aila yet, but Billy was certainly here in 2019 when the Springfield Thunderbirds played that preseason game in the rink against Hartford. So it was nice how it kind of came full circle there, It was pretty cool.
The hockey world usually does.
Yeah. So one thing that I wanted to kind of ask you is obviously you had a lot of time being around your own father who played in the NHL for a while, worked for a number of organizations, kind of a builder of the league to some degree. But one thing that jumped out was like, how did you choose the college route? Like back in your day, was there like the junior thing still going on, or?
Yeah, certainly junior was still a prominent path, right, to pursue your hockey career. But college was coming along, and there were some really good players moving on to that college route. With Dad being with the Blues, Red Berenson was really probably the first top NHL player to come out of college, and we were good friends with the Berenson's family, so he was certainly an influence on that as well. But it just, to me, was important to pursue my education, although I stumbled on that a little bit when I went to Colgate, but Colgate was a wonderful avenue, and was very blessed to be there. Met my wife. The best coach I ever had in all of my levels of hockey was Terry Slater at Colgate University.
Wow.
And just wonderful teammates. It was a terrific experience.
I guess from an aside from that, just as a hockey geek, you must have played games at the Clinton Arena, right?
I may have, but played in a lot of...
Well, at Colgate, where did you guys play?
Yeah, we played all over. Hockey, it was Hockey East, and so, we were...
Like your home rink, though?
It was in Hamilton, New York.
Hamilton, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I thought that Colgate kind of played in Clinton right there, that's kind of a famous rink in New York. They won the Hockeyville a few years ago. Like I thought maybe Hamilton plays their
Hamilton
games.
College?
Yeah, maybe Hamilton plays their games there.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So, but to backtrack a little bit, you just growing up around your dad in the original days of the NHL, were you... I guess you were born and your dad was involved when there were still only 6 teams, right?
Yeah, Dad got into the professional hockey ranks in the original 6 days, and his brother Keith, my uncle, as well. Another uncle, Ron Atwell, as well, and we have a fun hockey family. We've had some wonderful family hockey tournaments back up in Sundridge. With some good stories there, but
no, we heard some of those on a road trip recently. We heard about that in the softball tournaments. They were also supposedly brutal.
They can be, absolutely. Yeah. No, those tournaments with Dad and Uncle Ron and Uncle Keith and all the cousins that have played, we just had a blast up there. But
just being around it for kind of so long, what's your first memory of the NHL? Like, what's your first, even as a young type of dude?
Yeah, I think my early my early favorite memories are from the St. Louis Blues. I was, Dad, what was that, 67? So I was 7 years old.
Yeah, that was the first expansion, right?
Yeah, and they did well, and they made it to the Stanley Cup Finals 3 years in a row, and the St. Louis arena would just rock. It was packed, and we as kids, it was an older team, so there were a lot of kids on the team my age, and during the game, we wouldn't be paying a lot of attention. We'd be out playing ball hockey and stuff, and tearing our dress clothes up. But after the game, the fans would just rain the ice rink with coins and money,
really?
in appreciation of the efforts of the players. And so all of us kids would run out there and start collecting money. And the fans after goals would sing, and you couldn't hear yourself think. They would just be singing, "Oh, when the Saints come marching in," but they'd sing, "Oh, when the Blues come marching in," and it was just a neat place.
So was St. Louis, did you kind of spend your early years there?
We were there for 5 years, roughly.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know it's a great hockey town.
Oh, it's a beautiful town.
There's a great sports town, but there's also, like, in the last 20 years, a handful of guys that played in the NHL kind of out of St. Louis. I mean, Pat Maroon would be the first one who comes to mind. But so after your dad left the Blues, what was your kind of path,
Yeah, and I thought at the time it was a blessing. We moved around quite a bit. He got into coaching, went to Denver in the Central Hockey League, did really well there, got called up to St. Louis, coached the Blues for a bit, didn't do so well there. He was released from St. Louis, and then we went to Vancouver, we went to California, we went to Cleveland.
Golden Seals, right?
Yeah. The old California Golden Seals, the white skates, and all of that. So
white skates.
Yeah. For me as a kid, it was beautiful places.
Yeah. How old were you, about then when he was with California?
I was a freshman the first year in high school, and then I moved back to Ontario to stay with family to play junior in Ontario because the hockey at that time in California was just starting to get going. So
yeah, that was kind of something that I wanted to ask you was like, you managed to make it to the NHL while your dad was doing a fair bit of hopping around. How did you kind of stay focused in on hockey with all the moves and stuff?
Yeah, I think, anybody that has a passion for no matter what it is, right? Whether it's hockey or any sport or arts or music, you have that passion and that's your focus, right? So I wasn't watching really so much what Dad was doing, where he was. I was just doing my thing, and certainly they offered wonderful support in my journey, and but didn't get caught up in any of the external stuff. Just was on my route.
So back in those days, we already talked a little bit about your college career, but back in those days, you made the jump right to the NHL, huh?
Yeah, and in hindsight, as we go through life, we try and make our best decisions. As I had alluded to earlier, I got into some academic trouble. Went home, started playing junior again, got back into school, and had really good grades. I had been drafted by the Maple Leafs the year prior, and they offered me a contract to turn pro, and certainly I was excited to jump on that. In hindsight, I would have loved to have gone back to Colgate for 2 more years. That was my sophomore year when I left. I think certainly long term it would have been better to go back to Colgate, but loved the opportunity to jump in with the Leafs.
I guess might be a weird question, but how did it feel getting drafted by the Leafs when you had allegiances to so many teams as a kid and as a member of the league, as a family member of the league,
Yeah, and we have a ton of family in Ontario, in Brampton, around Toronto, up in Sunderidge, all over Ontario. So it was a thrill. Back then it wasn't like it is today where it's all publicized and televised, and so I just got a phone call the next day that, hey, you went to Toronto in the 6th round, and
wow,
that was cool.
A 6th rounder, and then you played in the NHL the very next season, huh?
I did. Yeah, I did. Got some games in with Toronto, played in Moncton with the American League affiliate mostly. 60 games, I think, in Moncton, and had a dozen or so with Toronto.
Did you see a different side of the league once you started playing in it? Like, was there some things that maybe you'd always wondered about that you didn't get from your dad, or you didn't get from maybe the other guys in the league you were friendly with?
It isn't so much that I didn't get something. Certainly the opportunity was there. I was a pretty immature kid. My wife will verify that.
You managed to go to a pretty good college, though, too, right?
Yeah,
Colgate's like a tough one.
I did, yeah. I overachieved there. But.
Like 2 years at Colgate is like 4 years here at WestCon. Like, it's like totally the same thing.
Yeah. I think I got 4 years out of Colgate in a semester and a half or whatever my sophomore year. Yeah.
But what was your impressions of the league in those days, and when you watch today, what are the differences that you see?
Yeah, it's night and day. The league had evolved nicely from when my dad played. When I came into it, today athletes are world-class athletes. They're training year-round, and it wasn't that way when I came into the league. And I was blessed to be with some great teammates, with the Daryl Sittlers and Ronnie Ellis and Borja Salmings and some class guys. But there really wasn't any help in the transition from a college kid playing 20 games a season to a professional playing 85 games a season, and that was really tough, and certainly the management of it all, right? Instead of having the disciplines of getting up and going to class and being a student, to being a guy with some money in your pocket, and you have to go to practice, and that's it for the day.
Something I wanted to ask you, though, because it's having played in the NHL and then gone down to the minors for a while, and then obviously seen Billy go through his own career. When you got sent to the minor leagues back in the day, was there that sense that, like, all right, I'm going to actually develop down here, or was it just kind of purgatory,
Yeah, it was a little of both. I had touched on that Terry Slater was my best coach ever. Even at the NHL level, no disrespect to any of those coaches from that era, they weren't teachers. They were coaches, they were whistleblowers, they were motivators, but they weren't teachers. And today, Billy does an awesome job teaching.
Oh, yeah.
And beyond the wins and losses, the coaches today, like Billy, care about the individual. They're not just a number on a roster, right? They're people, and there's a true commitment to helping that person achieve success in life and in hockey.
Well, something I wanted to ask you is obviously one of the most infamous moments in the history of the NHL, and I've literally seen like this clip set to rap music and stuff like that over the years. It's just been amazing. Could you tell us, it's probably the only time some of the listeners know, and then there's probably listeners that don't know, is Mr. McCreary delivered probably the hardest hit on Wayne Gretzky in the history of the NHL that I can recall. And you told us kind of a funny story about like going back to the bench and stuff last night. Would you share that with the...
Yeah, it was late in the game, probably fortunate for me. So Dave Semenko never had an opportunity to catch up to me during the game. But yeah, it was just a play where I was back checking. Wayne got caught with his head down, and it was a head-on collision. It did a little damage to him. Thankfully, nothing long-term or of significant issue, but it was a good hit. If it wasn't Wayne Gretzky, it would have just been another big hit, right? But because it was Wayne, it still is a big deal to this day.
This is one of those things that because of the YouTube era and because of how things have become so punctuated, there's a lot of misconceptions. And one thing I did want to ask you, did you get back in the game? Because a lot of people, you didn't, no.
Not that game.
Yeah,
it was late in the game, and the coach took me off the ice, probably for my own benefit.
Right.
But yeah, no, I didn't get back on the ice that game.
But you continued to play for the Leafs for a little while.
For a little bit, yeah. And as we had touched on, there was a change in regime, and the new staff brought in some of their guys, and the borderline guys like me at that time, being a rookie, were moved on.
So then you kind of went to the minor leagues and the old International League when it was a really high-level league. We talked about it last night. There just were only so many jobs in professional hockey in those days. What was it like going down there, and what kind of success did you have? Because I don't, nowadays, like, these sites don't really talk about, like, what the seasons were like as much,
Sure. No, I love my time at all, in all the leagues. The American League was terrific. It was a tough league. When I was in Moncton, the Maine Mariners were Philadelphia's farm team. Philadelphia was a really tough organization back then.
Great town to play in, too.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful. So that league was more physical. The Central League was a lot of Southern teams, and it was a more skilled, more casual kind of game. Yeah, and the I, in my early years, still was a pretty rugged league, had that reputation. But when the Central League folded and all those players came into the I, it certainly brought the skill level up significantly. But we were blessed to be in Milwaukee for 5 years, which is a beautiful city and great ownership, great coaching, and teammates. We had a blast. We were in Milwaukee for 5 years.
Did you go far in the playoffs and stuff as a pro?
We had actually, I was telling Billy, my best run in the playoffs was my first year in Moncton.
Wow.
We were in the semifinals, Game 7, on the road, overtime, and a little dump in from center ice beat us. And
wow.
And Moncton actually went on to win it the next year, which was fun because some of my teammates from my year there were still participating that next year when they won it, so that was cool to see.
Something that really stood out to me last night when we were just kind of basically everyone that's in the room now was in Billy's office kind of privately, was that you just seemed so charged up after the game. Like, you really got a good kick out of the game last night. Could you tell us what you saw and how it played out in your mind?
Yeah, and I think you felt that same feeling from everybody after that game. That was just a phenomenal playoff game, right? It was great speed, great energy, lots of physicality. There were momentum swings both ways. Danbury went up by a couple, and Binghamton pushed back and got one, and it was just a classic hockey game.
Do you watch the NHL like that? Are you big with the NHL playoffs and stuff? 'Cause I know Billy likes to watch.
Yeah, I love any sport come playoff time, even sports that I'm not a huge fan of, because the stakes are just so much higher, right? And the energy and the tempo is so much more significant. But yeah, I've been watching the Edmonton series, the Toronto series, and yeah, there's been some good hockey.
Billy told me, I think, I'm not 100. You were coaching high school for a long time.
Yeah, when I retired in '88 and we moved to the Michigan Brighton area, I got into coaching right away. Was coaching Billy all the way up through midget until he went away to prep school, and then I had coached some high school early on in those years, and then I got back into high school after Billy moved on. So yeah, actually this past winter was my first winter in 30-some years not coaching.
Did you miss it at all? Or?
I feel bad I didn't.
Wow.
I'm getting old, Matt, and, the Michigan winters combined with going to the rink every day, it adds up on this old body. So Marianne and I did some fun traveling, went to Mexico for a while, went to Savannah, Georgia for a while, got to come out here a bit.
Another nice town, Savannah, beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful.
But I think that was great. I mean, it's really nice to have you in the studio, but just to share that one story, just to backtrack and share that one story that you told us last night about your dad coming home with the cut on his head.
Oh yeah.
That was after a game.
Yeah, it was in Detroit, and he got home late that night.
Playing with the Blues?
He was playing with the St. Louis Blues, and Dad at that point, when Dad was younger, he was a scorer. He was an offensive player,
type of guy,
and a threat. He was good, and at that point in his career, in his 30s, he was winding down, and he became more of a defensive specialist. So his job was to shadow and shut down the Bobby Hulls and the Gordie Howes, and so he came home with a big zipper down his forehead, and what happened, Dad? Well, Gordie gave me an elbow.
That's great. That's amazing.
Old time hockey.
Yeah.
You just go back to the hit on Gretzky. In that era, that was a nice clean hit, right?
Yeah.
In today's day, there would have been suspensions handed out.
What do you feel about that? I mean, I guess there's a big movement today to try and limit injuries and stuff like that. But we had one hit this year, and the guy said he might never play in Danbury again. Certain guy,
right?
And I mean, he was fine. You know what I mean? The next week he's fine. He played the whole. I'm not saying he's not playing with injury now, but how do you feel about the softening of the game?
Well, I love a couple of things about it. One is certainly the European influence brought an emphasis to skill, right? And the finesse side of the game, which is just beautiful. When you see plays out there that are made today at the speed they're executed, it's incredible. So taking away some of the physicality and some of those players that were just, the bruising type players, the enforcers, they don't have roster spots anymore. You have to be able to play the game, which I think has made our game better. It is a fine line, right? I'm a supporter of the health and wellness of the athletes,
right?
Number one. But there are times where it just seems like it's being called too tight.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
But Billy, he may have shared with you, he experienced post-concussion issues and health issues because of what he went through, and you just hate to see that for anybody.
Yeah, definitely the way the game is evolving, so many more people getting involved. And now they're even talking about implementing checking for girls hockey.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
You think it would be good?
Yeah, and I don't like that for kids hockey today that you don't check until bantam. There's no reason that they can't have some physicality to the game at younger ages, so they learn it and learn to be prepared for it and how to defend it and
do it safely. I guess
exactly, responsibly,
at appropriate times.
Yeah,
Wow.
Yeah, and it goes back to coaching too, right? There's still hard-nosed coaches out there that just want to overemphasize the physicality of the game and pound the opponent, and you just hope that coaches emphasize the intent of a body check is to separate the player from the puck, not to injure him.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And then I wanted to ask, what has it been like? How do you feel as a dad just watching, your son go through his playing days, winning a cup, and then, being on his coaching terms now and then trying to do the same thing?
Sure. Yeah, it's been a blast. Billy's always been an excellent competitor, a lot like me at a young age, very focused on the passion for the game, and pursuing competing at higher levels. And from his days at Shattuck, they won a championship, and onto the SB, he won a championship, and in the Fed, he won a championship, all his players. And I love his growth as a coach. To me, it's incredible the commitment he brings to a player when he signs him to his roster. He's not just a number. It's not just show me what you can do and you better do it quickly or I'm going to be moving on from you. He's trying to groom players and he's excited to move them to the next level. And I think a lot of it is from he has a real love for family, right, and for the people, and that carries into his coaching.
Before we let you go, last kind of serious question, though. There's just so much chit-chat and all this stuff on Facebook, and from the level that Pat and we're almost like volunteers for the team in some regards, like, put out the show and fill the water bottles when I have to. But, you're the first former NHL player that we've ever had on the show, and I want to ask you to give us an honest assessment. What do you think of the league, the Federal League, like, but in your most honest terms?
Yeah, I think that parity would be healthy. You hope those bottom teams continue to work on building better rosters and becoming more competitive. That was one of my concerns for Danbury coming into this series is they had such a nice run through the end of the season and the first round of playoffs. But, the competition wasn't the top teams. So you just wonder, are they going to be prepared for a Binghamton series where Binghamton's played very well? I think they won our last 15 games all year, and they're a solid squad. So, I hope the Fed gets more parity. I would love to see more consistent officiating. The game Friday night in bingo, I don't understand the 5-minute majors that were handed out. Certainly, again, you want to protect the players and the athletes, but I hope the officiating can step it up a notch. Like I said to you last night, that game was as exciting a game with speed and physicality. It was as exciting a game as you'll see anywhere.
And I think that was made the difference. I think I even said this to Pat on the ride home. I may have even said it to Coach that was just such a stop-and-go game on Friday night. It seemed like we were always stopping. Yeah. Like when we played against Elmira, it was like sensory overload on the bench, like broken sticks, like different things happen, smelling salt, edges. Nobody lost their edge Friday night, but we were just stopping, starting. And I think that hurts the game, and I think somebody like you could probably agree. It's playoffs. You got to let these guys play it out. You know what I mean? Like
that's what happened last night, right?
Yeah,
the
that's what
referees
happened.
kind of put their whistles away. There was a lot of stuff they could have called that they didn't, and I love that. It wasn't dangerous stuff.
Right.
It wasn't something that needed to be called.
It was borderline stuff.
Absolutely. Let them play. And
that would have set the game,
I think they did a great job. We were at Port Huron a couple of weekends ago for that series, and that last game in Port Huron, holy cow. There's times, and you guys see it, where there's an incident, right, that is somewhat significant, fight, scrums, whatever, and it takes the referees 5 minutes to figure out what they're going to call.
Right. It never seems like there's a chief in the crew that's going to kind of make a quick decision that's based on logic and based on precedent or something like that.
Sure.
Precedent. What's the precedent for this? Oh, well, a couple weeks ago we gave this guy a 5 for the same thing. All right, it's 5. You know what I mean? It just never seems like they're dealing with precedent consistently and stuff like that.
I'm not a good one to talk about officiating because Dad struggled with officiating.
Was he brutal?
Oh, yeah. And when he was
in the family.
Yeah.
When he was between jobs and I was playing junior, he jumped on the bench with us for one game, and he challenged the refs. He threw sticks on the ice. He was tossing water bottles. Yeah. I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, coaching high school, I got him to help me out a little bit, which was a blast.
That's awesome.
But he was older, had higher blood pressure, and
that's no good.
And that's when their doctor said, you got to get out of coaching. You can't. It's bad for your health. But we had a scrum in front of our bench, and one of their big players had bent one of our smaller players over the boards and was giving the business to him a little bit. And Dad was right there, and he grabbed the other player's face mask, and he pulled it in. He said, let our guy go. I said, Dad, let him go. Dad, let him go.
You spent But you spent so much of your life in pro hockey from a kid up until, I guess, whatever year you retired. You say you were in your late 20s?
Yeah, 88 I retired.
So, but what I wanted to ask you was, you never had that interest or kind of ambition to go into the business side of hockey? Or
I had thought about it, but I think I moved around so much as a youngster that I was just ready to try and settle down somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And even as a player, I bounced around. So I was ready to settle down a little bit, and professional coaching isn't a good way to do that.
Yeah. Well, it's really been great having you on the show, and this is probably one of the best interviews, probably one of the best shows we had. But maybe we should ask Billy a question.
Uh-oh.
I actually did want to. I wanted to ask him.
I've got to go.
We should ask Aila some stuff. Aila, tell us something. She was laughing. She was laughing hardest when Mr. McCreary said that the Fed might see some parity soon.
She's heard me talk a lot behind the scenes, that's for sure.
Well, I wanted to ask you, I think last season I ended up asking you this, but, you said that Wayne was your favorite player growing up, and then obviously, your dad laid the hit on him. I mean, growing up, having that knowledge, what was that kind of like, going to school and then being like, my dad did that?
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, kids always ask me about it, and, you'd see it on the highlight tapes and the Don Cherry videos and all that stuff. So, certainly it was... it's neat to know that my dad was involved in that moment in time, and but at the end of the day, Gretzky was my favorite player. I love watching him. He was so dynamic, and it really just taught me that the game is the game, and no matter who you are, everybody's susceptible to some physicality out there, and you got to keep your head up and play the game hard and play it the right way.
I know it's probably you guys have done some stuff together, some coaching stuff over the years. When do you think, I'm sure you did it when you were real young and then at different ages, but when do you think you kind of learned the most when you were working with your dad?
Oh, I don't know if I could pick a point in time. I mean, he coached me pretty much my whole life up until I went to Shattuck, and, learned a lot of valuable lessons there on and off the ice, about grades and, focus on school and taking care of what you got to take care of there. And, having the opportunity to coach with him, was obviously pretty special, and we were able to work with some really high-level kids and some great families and travel the world while doing it. So, just to have his support there and to be able to travel as a family, and, some of those kids are going to go on to, some of them are in the NHL right now or will be here shortly. So, again, good group, good memories, and, all, like my dad alluded to earlier, just all about the family and the growth of the family and growing the game as well.
That thing you were telling us, that you guys literally coached in Italy and in different places, right?
Yeah, we were in Bolzano, Italy, and I was forgetting Sweden.
Chamonix, France.
Yeah, we were in Sweden, we were in Finland, Chamonix.
Mommy, Dad.
Yeah, you want to go?
Yeah, she's probably getting ready.
She's been pretty good.
No, she's been great.
Yeah, so it's it's been great traveling the world and being able to do that with the guy that I look up to the most, and it's been fun.
That's awesome.
I guess we'll conclude today's episode. Guys, thank you so much for
Very
coming
special
in.
episode
Very
of Hat Trick
special.
City. Thanks so much, guys.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
We wanted to spend, a little time asking one of Danbury Arena's most frequent visitors questions, so it's great to have Aila McCreary here with us. She's at every game. She's one of the most popular fans in the arena. Daughter of Danbury Hat Trick's head coach, Billy McCreary, Aila McCreary. Aila, how you doing? Aila, do you think the referees did a good job up in Binghamton on Friday night with all the penalties and the general confusion throughout the game?
No.
Aila, we want to get your input on this. Do you think Binghamton has the grit to match the Hat Tricks?
No.
Aila, do you think there's any other fan base in pro hockey that matches the passion and flame that the Danbury fans have?
No.
Tell us. You're at the rink all the time. One thing we wanted to ask you about is, do you like the new kiosk system for ordering beers and snacks at the arena?
No.
And then, Aila, to close this out, do you have any messages you want to send to the Hat Tricks going into this Monday night game?
Good.
Fans, we want to thank you all for joining us for today's very special episode. And we also want to highlight the fact that this is our 25th episode.
25.
It's pretty huge for us, so we thank all the listeners for sticking with us through this season, our first season of doing this. And then, also all the players and staff.
For sure. And definitely Billy, who's got behind us on this one. And just, he made sure that we're treated like members of the media and we're given access to the players. So that's unbelievable. And I also like to thank Herm, who's been a big supporter of the show, and he's wanted us to be successful with this. But I really have to thank all the listeners: Ron Evans, Lee, Dom Alessandro, Risick, Ron Rogel, Alex, everybody who listens. You're it's just all great. Roger Katz, a longtime Danbury guy. I know he's listening to the shows. Ira Schwartz, just all of you people have meant so much to us, and anybody that supports this show. It means a lot. Again, we don't get paid for it or anything like that, but just to hear that people are enjoying this and feel like they're getting more access to the team, it's really humbling.
It really is. We've said this a million times. We'll keep saying it, and we just felt that it was, our duty as Hat Trick City citizens to, deliver this kind of, information and type of show to you guys, the fans. Considering there's not much local media coverage of it anyway, but we're glad that we can fill that void and fill it in the most fun and entertaining way possible. Again, make sure to come out to
Monday night. We need everybody from Danbury out there. If you like sports, if you care about Danbury just a little, obviously we want all the hockey fans down there, but this is a night for Danbury. There's a lot going on probably in the media and around town, and there's definitely some maybe some dark clouds around the city. But right this second, we have a great opportunity to help these guys as fans get to the next round. We did it Saturday night. We could do it again, and we could definitely just pull the rest of the teams in this league right along with us, and that's what we've done. So it'd be great to see everybody who can make it down at the rink for a 7:00 start on Monday night. Danbury Arena, Binghamton Black Bears, your Danbury Hat Tricks. It really is everybody's city, and everybody who listens to this team, we're all part of a family. We're all part of a community. So it's just great to have all the support.
Again, thank you guys for listening. We hope to see you there tomorrow night. Once again, 7:00 p.m. puck drop for Game 3 of the semifinals against the Binghamton Black Bears. Thank you. I've been DJ Pattycake.
DJ Uncle Matt, thanks so much for everything. We really appreciate all the listeners and everybody involved with the Hat Tricks organization.
Thank you all.